Today, I traveled by train to the reunion, mindful of our intentions to consume alcohol. During the journey, I encountered an old acquaintance, Stephen, who had a penchant for mocking me. He sarcastically remarked, "Man, you don't even own a car. Is that merely a distant dream for someone as underprivileged as you? Even if by some miracle you managed to acquire one, it would undoubtedly be a wreck. You couldn't possibly make an appearance here in that condition." Stephen's laughter was boisterous and his words stung. I found his behavior exceedingly vexing. Mocking someone without understanding their circumstances is utterly distasteful. Despite my irritation, he persisted in boasting about his accomplishments, which only intensified my annoyance. Suddenly, a luxurious limousine arrived at the venue, drawing attention as it halted at the entrance. A striking woman emerged and greeted me with respect. My introduction was simple. I'm Mark, the third of 5 siblings, nestled between an older sister and brother and 2 younger siblings. Our mother, always serene, never raised her voice, offering guidance with a smile. My father, a taxi driver by profession, previously worked in car maintenance until a back injury necessitated his retirement. However, his passion for cars and a commercial driving license allowed him to transition seamlessly to driving. This passion was infectious, and I found myself drawn to the world of automobiles, spending hours with die-cast cars and car encyclopedias, absorbing every detail. My school notebooks were filled with sketches of cars, much to the chagrin of my teacher, Mr. Samuel, who likened them to catalogs. These memories, particularly poring over car catalogs brought home by my father, are cherished. My father, aware of my interest, expressed regret that he could only provide catalogs instead of toys or comics, but I reassured him of my contentment. Our family, though not affluent, managed the essentials for a family of 7, with luxuries reserved for special occasions. The longing for a car game once brought a shadow over my parents' faces as they apologized for their inability to fulfill this wish. The simplicity of our lives was underscored by such moments, yet it was within this context that my fascination with cars thrived, a testament to the influence of my father and the resilience of our family spirit. "We'd love to get it for you, but things are tight right now," my parents said with regret in their voices. At the time, being at an age when my selfishness knew no bounds, I became sullen for about 4 days after my request was denied. However, as I grew older, I began to understand our family's financial constraints. With this understanding, I started to appreciate just how much my parents had to sacrifice to deny our whims. I recognized their boundless kindness and gradually became less demanding. The school I attended was small, with only 2 classes per grade. Standout individuals were recognized by all students, including the Mark siblings. As a result, we often faced teasing. However, my older siblings, being well-grounded, either turned these negative comments into jokes or simply brushed them off with skill. My younger brother, the biggest and strongest among us, countered such ridicule with his physical presence and assertiveness, earning him respect and a leadership role among his peers. My youngest sister, the baby of the family, excelled at making requests and was endlessly spoiled by all 4 of us. This made her a beloved figure among her peers, adored by everyone in her grade. Before long, she had mastered the art of charm and won over many allies, ensuring no one dared to criticize us for being a large family of 7 siblings. As for me, I became the main target of teasing due to my lack of physical strength and courage to confront or change my circumstances. The verbal arrows intended for my siblings often ended up directed at me. However, my older siblings always protected me, which brought me great joy. Yet, with every instance, I felt a pathetic sense of powerlessness for not being able to stand up for myself. There was a guy in my class named Stephen, born into a wealthy family, who could get almost anything he wanted. His life was the complete opposite of mine. Knowing my love for cars, Stephen would always boast about the vehicles his parents owned, saying things like, "You probably don't have this at your place," or "You must be jealous, right?" Each remark hurt me deeply. Moreover, he brought high-quality toys like die-cast cars, model kits, and RC cars to school, items much higher in quality than the cheap ones I owned, and boasted about them to me and our classmates. He let others handle them freely, but he never let me touch them, saying, "I don't want your poverty to rub off on me." Despite it being against the rules to bring such items to school, he flaunted them, avoiding the teacher's gaze. Then, one day, he went too far. In front of everyone, he boasted, holding up a limited edition model that even enthusiasts would envy, a piece worth a considerable amount if sold on the market. He had brought such an item to school. Naturally, everyone was impressed, expressing their envy. They all handled the model, admiring it, but of course, he didn't let me touch it. After school, an incident occurred. The limited edition model was missing, vanished without a trace. Stephen started causing a commotion in the classroom over it, accusing me first. "You did it, didn't you?" Naturally, I denied it, but he wouldn't listen to a word I said, bombarding me with insults instead. Then, our teacher, Mr. Samuel, walked into the classroom and asked the most composed student, "What happened here?" After understanding the situation, Mr. Samuel came over to Stephen and me to hear both sides of the story. I insisted on my innocence, while Stephen, on the other hand, was unilaterally placing the blame on me. Mr. Samuel seemed to sense something and let out a deep sigh. Then, he said, "I understand the situation, so let's all start looking for it. Something that valuable can't just disappear," and everyone remaining in the classroom began searching. For a while, nothing was found, but as the day was about to end, one of the boys came forward, looking guilty in front of Mr. Samuel. He admitted, "I'm sorry, I hid it," and immediately went to apologize to Stephen. Stephen forgave him easily, as if it were a minor matter, despite having been so harsh with me. I was filled with surprise and anger, but at that moment, I couldn't say anything. Mr. Samuel, still a young teacher with a flexible mindset and a broad perspective, always treated us students fairly. He kindly said to me, "You got caught up in quite a mess." Those words were a strong stimulus for me, who had been continually blamed without the usual support of my older siblings. Tears streamed down my face as I told Mr. Samuel in broken words, "I was suspected because I'm poor. It can't be helped, but it becomes harder and harder when everyone looks at me like that." Not being believed was painful. Mr. Samuel gently patted my head and said softly, "It's better to speak up against unfairness. That courage will be the key to saving your heart. Besides, you're not alone. There are always people who believe in you, just like I believe in you, Mark." Those words stayed with me deeply. Knowing there were people who believed in me, I felt reassured that I had someone to rely on. From the next day, I was more open about expressing my thoughts. As days passed, I became more outgoing. Being honest and speaking my mind led to less teasing about being one of 7 siblings. However, Stephen's attitude remained unchanged. I continued to assert my dislikes without backing down. When he became too persistent, I made it a point to ignore him. Eventually, Stephen would walk away, clearly not amused. I learned that hiding my feelings wouldn't convey them to others. By actively speaking up, I could change from who I used to be, feeling hopeful. I began engaging more with my classmates and, as I made various friends, Stephen's harassment eventually stopped. 22 years have passed, and I've grown. Speaking up has become a part of who I am, enabling me to connect with many. Now, I'm engaged in a job that benefits from my network. Around that time, I received a call from my parents informing me there was a letter for me in the mailbox. I had my parents check it, and it turned out to be an invitation to a reunion. The main event was to celebrate the 22-year milestone and to unearth a time capsule we buried in the 5th grade. Initially, I thought not to attend, but when I heard that Mr. Samuel, who had always been kind to me, would also attend, I decided to participate immediately. However, my current workload made attending challenging, but I began to strategize, thinking I could make it work by rearranging some commitments. I now live far from my hometown, away from my family home. I thought getting to the venue would be difficult, but it was conveniently near my current residence. I can make it if I finish my work in the morning, I thought. With that last concern resolved, my plans were set. Choosing a venue for the after-party, which I had also pondered, was Zia. I promptly booked a spot online. The reunion took place in a spacious pub reserved entirely for us. Since the invitation mentioned drinking, I opted for the train over driving. The highlight was the unveiling of the time capsule. The organizer had retrieved it from our elementary school and brought it to the reunion. We were to open it together on Signal. Upon arrival, old friends welcomed me warmly. Despite nearly 2 decades, I recognized everyone. Everyone had matured well, displaying a charm almost beyond recognition from our elementary days. I enjoyed catching up and reminiscing with them. At that moment, a notably lively group entered, and in the midst of them was Stephen, eagerly talking about the luxury car he now owned. Stephen's car is stunning. I've never seen such a luxury vehicle before. Me too, me too. Typical Stephen, always so extravagant, his friends, essentially a fan club, were relentless in their adulation. Stephen himself was roaring with laughter, visibly basking in the attention. His entrance and style dominated the room, capturing everyone's gaze. Today, Stephen was decked out like a celebrity, his suit paired with ostentatious gold accessories and a watch that glittered with diamonds, unabashedly flaunting his wealth. His followers erupted in cheers, their enthusiasm unmistakable. "Really? Well, I'll take you all for a spin later," he announced with the flamboyance of a showman. His followers erupted in cheers again, their excitement undiminished. Intrigued by the luxury car that had sparked such a buzz, I looked outside the venue. There, prominently displayed at the entrance, was a vivid red luxury sports car. Its presence was like a tomato on top of a sundae. Well, it was out of place, to say the least. Observing the car in disbelief, Stephen came over to me and, true to form, he immediately taunted me, "Poor thing, granted you hadn't dressed lavishly for the event." My watch was modest, and my suit was a standard charcoal gray. My shoes were the usual leather, making me resemble the typical office worker seen downtown. Hence, his jab seemed unwarranted, leaving me bemused. "You're a car enthusiast, right? How did you arrive today, huh?" "As usual, I took the train," I answered. At this, Stephen howled with laughter. "You don't own a car. Is having one just an unattainable dream for someone as poor as you? Even if you did, a guy like you could only afford a beater, so showing up in one wouldn't be an option, right?" Stephen jeered, his laughter booming. His arrogance was infuriating. Making assumptions without knowledge is one thing, but finding them amusing is entirely another. Engaging him would only escalate the situation, so, as before, I responded ambiguously and removed myself from the conversation. However, throughout the reunion, he followed me about, constantly boasting. Eventually, even I grew weary of his relentless self-promotion. Initially annoyed, my encounter with my former teacher provided a welcome distraction, and I eventually drifted away. I savored the time catching up with Mr. Samuel, discussing the past and present. This exchange lifted my mood, making me anticipate the after-party. But then, the cacophony returned. One of Stephen's entourage seemed to be begging for a ride in his car. Assuming Stephen was reveling in the limelight, I glanced his way. Regrettably, our eyes met. "Oh, are you jealous too? You should just admit it if you are. But I wouldn't let someone like you touch it anyway. Don't want my precious car catching your poverty stink," while embracing his 2 sidekicks standing beside him with both arms, he said. Then he added, "But hey, if you grovel and lick my shoes, maybe I'll consider it. Miss this chance, and you'll never get a ride." To be honest, comments like that made me feel more contempt than anger. I eyed him and chuckled dismissively. Just then, "Hey, check that out." "What is that?" I've never seen such a car in real life. People near the entrance were whispering excitedly. Curious, I went to see what the fuss was about. There stood a limousine, even more out of place than Stephen's car. "Hey, Stephen, man, you're incredible. Did you arrange this car too?" One of his followers looked at him with admiration. But Stephen himself seemed confused. "No, I don't know anything about this," Stephen muttered under his breath. Then the people around him suddenly looked puzzled and started looking around, wondering who it could be. Just then, a beautiful woman stepped out of the limousine. Upon spotting me, she smiled and nodded in greeting. "Mr. Mark, sorry to keep you waiting. I've arranged the car for the after party, as you instructed." "Thanks," I replied. Our exchange made my classmates do a double take. Then, a friend from the organizing committee came over and thanked me. "Mark, thanks for arranging this. This was possible because of my current job. I'm the president of a luxury car rental company. My friends who've kept in touch knew this. This time, I was asked if I could plan an impactful after party, so I decided to offer a limousine at a discounted rate. We planned to head to the after party venue in the limousine after the main event. To ensure enjoyment during the ride, I stocked the limousine fridge with various drinks and snacks. That should be impactful enough, the friend organizing the event explained the situation to everyone. There, from different parts of the crowd, voices could be heard saying that Mark is a president? Must be some kind of joke. Can't be real. Like the organizer, a few friends were in the know about me, but it seemed most were not. Amid all the attention, Stephen approached me. You're the president of a rental car company? That's not true, right?" "It's no lie. With my line of work, I've seen so many luxury cars, I'm practically jaded. I think they're fine for an occasional spin, but for everyday use, a regular car suits me just fine," I said with a relaxed smile, grinning at Stephen. At that, he seemed to flush with frustration, his face turning beet red. Not only the car, but everyone was also captivated by the woman who had stepped out of the limousine. Noticing the many gazes on her, she addressed the classmates, saying, "I am serving as Mark's secretary." The crowd, initially stunned, quickly gathered around her. "You're so beautiful, you must be great at your job. How long have you been Mark's secretary? Frankly, what do you think of him? Which university did you graduate from?" Faced with a barrage of questions, the secretaries seemed a bit bewildered. So, I decided to set the record straight. "Sorry to spoil the fun, but she's my sister, so back off," I said. "What? Seriously?" everyone exclaimed in surprise. "Yes, the woman serving as my secretary is indeed my sister," I confirmed. Known for her charm and for attracting the opposite sex throughout her school years, she's become somewhat of a legend. While she's still as willful as ever on the inside, her outward appearance is undeniably appealing. Thanks to that, when she handles client relations, she's guaranteed to be a great success. She's truly a valuable asset. By the way, Mr. Mark, about that sports car parked in front of the shop, my sister inquired. Yes, that's right. But it's not really worth mentioning, I whispered back. However, Stephen must have overheard because he shouted, "What's that? Say it clearly." So, with a sigh, I said loud enough for everyone to hear, "That car? It's a rental, right? It's one of the cars our company rents out, isn't it?" Stephen turned beet red and denied, "That's not true. I bought that car." However, the car had a sticker on the window clearly indicating it was a rental. Anyone familiar would instantly recognize this. It seemed no one else at the venue was aware, so I had kept quiet about it. Upon realizing Stephen's car was a rental, his followers quickly changed their tune. In disbelief, they said, "So it was just borrowed? What a letdown," and walked away from him. Then, they began to prepare to leave, getting into the after-party mood only. My secretary, Stephen, and I were left in the now messy pub. I didn't know what to say to the disheartened Stephen at that moment. He started to mutter various things. He was born an only child into a wealthy family, in stark contrast to me. However, his parents often sacrificed their time because of their wealth and were rarely home. He was given everything he wanted but always felt a sense of loneliness. In contrast, I had many siblings. My older brothers and sisters looked out for me, and I had adorable younger siblings. Stephen seemed to envy that. He too liked cars and often browsed for catalogs. He wanted to be friends over our shared interest in cars, but never said so because of his pride. He also wanted to apologize for the model incident from the past, but after that event, I stopped interacting with him, which made him anxious. The same went for today's luxury car. He knew it was out of place, but wanted to grab the crowd's attention by driving it. I was listening seriously, but my sister wasn't. Upon hearing his confession, she immediately exclaimed, "That's creepy." I tried to calm her down, saying, "That's no way to talk about something someone said seriously." But my sister wouldn't stop teasing. "Just because you want attention? Maybe that's fine for kids, but for an adult to say that, it's nothing but creepy. It's like being a stalker." Stephen was visibly shocked by her relentless words. I thought to myself, she went too far. But even as the two of us felt down, my sister continued relentlessly. "If you wanted to make up, you should have just apologized sincerely instead of all this roundabout nonsense. Acting like this for years is just childish and uncool," she said. Stephen looked like he was about to cry, but what my sister said was right, though I do think she might have gone a bit too far. Sorry for my sister, but she's right. There's a limit to how much you can push your pride. "I'm sorry, but I can't see us becoming friends," I told him. Hearing this, Stephen collapsed to his knees, even more devastated. "I heard there's an after party. Where's it at?" Mr. Samuel, our former teacher, suddenly appeared amidst the tense atmosphere. "You guys arguing like this when you should be capable of mature thought? Honestly, it's a bit disappointing, as your teacher," he said. "Mr. Samuel, how long have you been listening?" I couldn't help but give a wry smile. Mr. Samuel said, laughing heartily, "Well, I didn't intend to at first." Then, he suddenly became quiet and looked at Stephen with a serious expression. "Stephen, a dialogue is about respecting the other person's opinion while expressing your own. You're aware of what you've done up to this point, right? Regardless of your past, you can't erase those facts. So, the right to forgive or not lies with Mark. Just because you apologize doesn't mean you'll be forgiven. It doesn't always work out so conveniently." Although Mr. Samuel's tone was as gentle as possible, his words were stern. He must have given the same guidance to him. When he was in elementary school, Stephen began to cry suddenly, perhaps recalling that time. Next, Mr. Samuel looked at me. "You've become able to express your feelings clearly. People can change, they can grow. I believe you understand that. You might feel it's unforgivable now, but I hope you can look at it in the long run. To me, both of you are dear former students," he said with a gentle smile. Mr. Samuel's words seemed to slowly seep into my heart. Thanks to his warm influence, I felt like I had more room in my heart. Thanks to that, I was able to think like this. Right now, I might not be able to forgive Stephen. The wounds he inflicted are deep, but if he tries to change and make efforts from now on, perhaps we could become good friends again. In the chilly, heavy, and damp atmosphere of the bar, even in such a situation, Mr. Samuel remained unflappable. "Well, that's a fantastic limousine. Does it even have a refrigerator? Riding in such a car must be like a dream. By the way, how many people can it hold?" "It can hold up to 8 people. "Wow, that's amazing." While receiving various explanations from my sister, Mr. Samuel carefully observed the limousine. As I watched Mr. Samuel with amusement, Stephen spoke to me. "I'm truly sorry for what I did in the past and just now. I'll never trouble you again. I won't be so presumptuous as to ask for forgiveness, but if we ever meet again, I hope you'll give us a chance to rebuild our relationship." Well, if we meet again, it's hard to suddenly engage in a friendly conversation with him, but watching someone trying to change makes you want to keep an eye on them. I couldn't help but let out a bittersweet smile, mixed with complex feelings. Just before we left the bar, a time capsule opening ceremony was held at the organizer's cue. Everyone counted down, and at the end, the seal was broken. Then, everyone took out the items with their names on them. Inside the time capsule with my name was a toy car I used to play with, and a letter. Upon opening it, the letter was written in the awkward handwriting of a young boy. It began with, "To my adult self, are you doing well? Did you get a job related to cars?" Currently, I've been trying to befriend a variety of individuals and have slowly increased my circle of friends. Spending time with friends is enjoyable, and I've learned to express myself better, all thanks to Mr. Samuel's wise counsel. Remember, always express gratitude, absolutely do not forget. His advice resonated with me, causing me to chuckle at its insistence. Upon noticing my amusement, Mr. Samuel approached and inquired if something was amusing. Just look at this, I urged, showing him the letter. With a look of fond remembrance, Mr. Samuel commented, "Ah, how nostalgic. Despite your shyness, you had moments of pure childlike innocence." "Mr. Samuel, I owe you my deepest thanks for your influence on my life," I expressed. Hearing this, others also shared their appreciation. "You've given us the chance to mend friendships, and still the love for math which led me to my dream career as a surveyor, all due to your support," one shared. Everyone took turns thanking Mr. Samuel, and for a moment, despite our adulthood, we were transported back to our elementary school days, sharing our feelings with the same eagerness and joy. "I should be the one thanking you," Mr. Samuel responded, his gratitude echoing multiple times, his eyes brimming with tears. "Seeing you all mature into admirable adults fills me with immense joy. These moments are a teacher's greatest fulfillment." His words touched many, drawing tears and culminating in spontaneous applause that filled the bar. The reunion, 22 years in the making, concluded on a high note with resounding applause. Since the reunion, a new addition has found its place in my room, a photo of Stephen and me, smiling in front of our personally purchased cars, standing shoulder to shoulder. Befriending him, despite our history, was another of Mr. Samuel's lasting impacts. Every morning, that photo serves as a reminder that people can indeed change. It reinforces my resolve to live by Mr. Samuel's enduring lessons.